Have you ever stopped to wonder why you're watching this right now, at this exact moment in your life? Out of countless videos, endless scrolling, and millions of messages competing for your attention, something drew you here. Not randomly, not accidentally. There is a reason this message found you when it did. And I want you to hear this clearly from the very beginning. This moment matters. You didn't click on this by chance. Something within you, something deeper than logic, knew you needed this today. For a moment, pause and reflect. Think about what you've been carrying lately. The quiet worries you don't talk about. The questions you whisper late at night. The things you've been hoping would change, praying would shift, waiting would finally break open. Maybe it's been days, maybe months, maybe years. And somewhere along the way, you may have wondered if nothing is happening, if the answers are delayed, or if life has simply forgotten you. But hear this now, nothing about this moment is forgotten. Nothing about you is overlooked. There is a universal principle at work, one that has been taught, practiced, and proven by those who understood how the mind, faith, and inner belief work together. When the inner world shifts, the outer world must follow. Change does not begin with force or struggle. It begins with alignment, and alignment often comes through the simplest acts, not the complicated ones. What I'm about to share with you may sound almost too simple at first. That's because truth often is. It doesn't shout. It doesn't demand. It quietly waits to be recognized. We're talking about olive oil. Yes, something ordinary, something familiar, something you may already have nearby. Yet, throughout history, across cultures, across spiritual teachings, olive oil has represented far more than nourishment. It has symbolized blessing, healing, favor, and divine flow. But let's be clear about something important. This is not about superstition. This is not about magic. This is about consciousness, intention, belief, and the law of the subconscious mind responding to symbols charged with meaning. When you combine a symbol with faith and expectation, you activate something powerful within yourself. Joseph Murphy taught that the subconscious mind accepts what the conscious mind feels to be true. And when an idea is impressed deeply enough, it begins to express itself as experience. The outer world becomes a mirror of inner conviction. This is why rituals, when performed with understanding, have always worked. Not because of the object itself, but because of what the object represents in the mind. Olive oil in this context becomes a point of focus, a physical reminder of an invisible truth. It represents abundance flowing without obstruction, healing restoring what has been worn down, favor opening doors that once felt sealed shut. When the mind accepts this idea fully, the law responds. Now think about your life honestly. Where do you feel blocked? Where does it feel like things should be moving, but aren't? Where do you sense that something is meant to change, yet hasn't happened yet? Those feelings are not random. They are signals. They are indications that your inner world is ready for a new instruction. So many people spend their lives waiting for the perfect circumstance, the perfect sign, the perfect confirmation before they act. But transformation doesn't begin after certainty, it begins before it. It begins the moment you decide to align with a new assumption, the moment you choose to believe something different is possible for you. Across history, those who experienced sudden shifts didn't do so by force. They did so by agreement. They agreed internally with a new reality. And that agreement changed everything. There is a story often shared about a woman who had reached the absolute end of her resources. Everything had been taken from her. Security, stability, and hope all seemed gone. Yet, when asked what she still had, her answer was almost insignificant, a small amount of oil. Not much, nothing impressive, but it was enough. Because it wasn't about the quantity, it was about what happened next. What looked small became the very channel through which abundance flowed. This is how life works. The mind doesn't need much to begin creating. It needs agreement. It needs a symbol it can accept. It needs a feeling of expectation. Once that is present, the law goes to work quietly, steadily, and inevitably. Over the next 3 days, something subtle but powerful begins to happen for those who truly engage with this idea. The mind begins to expect good. the heart begins to open, resistance softens, and when resistance dissolves, life rushes in. People often say they want miracles, but what they're really longing for is movement. A sign that they're not stuck. A signal that things are changing. A moment where they can say, something shifted. And that shift almost always begins internally. Think about how many times you've tried to fix things by overthinking, worrying, or forcing outcomes. And think about how exhausting that feels. Now imagine approaching life differently. Imagine assuming that help is already on the way, that solutions are forming, that unseen forces are arranging things in your favor. That assumption alone begins to change how you speak, how you act, how you respond. When the mind accepts the idea of flow instead of struggle, the body relaxes. When the body relaxes, intuition sharpens. When intuition sharpens, opportunities become visible. Things that were always there suddenly stand out. Conversations open. Doors appear. Timing aligns. This is not fantasy. This is law. Those who practiced these principles didn't beg life to change. They expected it to. And expectation is one of the most powerful forces there is. Now consider this: the subconscious mind responds best to repetition and emotion. This is why short, focused periods of intentional practice are so effective. 3 days is not arbitrary. It's long enough to impress a new idea, and short enough to maintain focus without distraction. During this time, the mind begins to accept a new assumption as normal. As this happens, you may notice subtle changes first. A sense of calm where anxiety used to be. A thought of hope where doubt once lived. A feeling that something good is unfolding, even if you can't yet explain how. These are not coincidences. These are indicators that alignment is taking place, and then often suddenly the outer world responds. A message arrives. A delay clears. A problem resolves itself in a way you couldn't have planned. Healing progresses. Finances shift. Relationships soften. What once felt heavy begins to feel lighter. Many people miss these moments because they're looking for something dramatic. But miracles often arrive quietly. They slip in through natural channels. They look ordinary until you realize how perfectly timed they are. This is why awareness is so important during this period. The more you notice good, the more good has room to expand. Gratitude amplifies expectation. Expectation amplifies results. Joseph Murphy often emphasized that the subconscious mind works day and night, responding faithfully to the thoughts and beliefs impressed upon it. It does not judge. It does not argue. It simply creates according to the pattern given to it. When you give it a pattern of harmony, it produces harmony. When you give it a pattern of abundance, it produces abundance. So ask yourself honestly, what pattern have you been feeding it lately? Fear, waiting, or trust? Openness, assumption of good. Nothing changes until the pattern changes. This is why simple symbols matter. They bypass overthinking. They speak directly to the subconscious. They say, something is happening now. And when the mind accepts that message, it begins to cooperate with life instead of resisting it. You may not see everything at once. You don't need to. You only need to allow the idea that things are shifting in your favor. That alone sets powerful forces in motion. There is also something important about timing. When someone encounters a message like this, it's usually not during a season of comfort. It's during a season of readiness. Readiness doesn't always feel good. Sometimes it feels like pressure, like restlessness, like dissatisfaction with how things are, but that discomfort is often the signal that growth is near. You're not broken. You're not behind. You're not failing. You're transitioning, and transitions require new assumptions. As these days unfold, you may feel prompted to release old thoughts, old resentments, old expectations that no longer serve you. Let them go gently. They've done their job. They brought you to this moment. But they don't need to come with you into what's next. Instead, begin to see yourself as someone through whom life flows easily, someone who expects solutions, someone who trusts that the universe or God or divine intelligence is actively working on your behalf. That trust is not passive, it's powerful. It's the kind of trust that allows you to rest while things rearrange, to sleep while answers form, to move through your day with quiet confidence instead of tension. And here's something important to remember. You don't need to convince anyone else of what you're doing. This is between you and your inner world. Transformation rarely needs an audience, it needs sincerity. Over these 3 days, let your inner dialogue shift. Instead of asking, "When will this change?" begin affirming, "This is changing now." Instead of saying, "I hope," begin saying, "I accept." Instead of waiting for proof, assume alignment, because proof follows assumption, not the other way around. Many people look back on moments like this and realize later that this was the turning point, not because of one dramatic event, but because something subtle changed inside them. And once that happened, life had no choice but to respond. If you remain attentive, you'll start to notice how often help shows up in ordinary forms. A conversation that brings clarity, an idea that sparks momentum, a coincidence that's too precise to ignore. These are the fingerprints of alignment. This is how miracles actually happen. Not through violation of law, but through fulfillment of it. And as this unfolds, let go of the need to control the outcome. Control comes from fear. Trust comes from understanding. When you understand that life responds to belief, you no longer need to force anything. Just allow. There's a quiet confidence that comes when you realize that you're no longer waiting, you're participating. You're no longer hoping, you're expecting. You're no longer asking if things will change, you're watching how they do. That confidence is magnetic. It changes how people respond to you. It changes how opportunities find you. It changes how quickly things resolve. This is why those who practice these principles consistently seem to live in a different flow. It's not that they avoid challenges. It's that challenges move through them faster. As these days pass, stay present. Stay open, stay receptive, and most of all, stay gentle with yourself. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be willing to believe something good is unfolding, willing to assume alignment, willing to let go of resistance. That willingness is powerful, and when you look back on this moment later, you may realize that this was the beginning, the moment you stopped struggling and started allowing. The moment you shifted from effort to expectancy. The moment you chose a new inner agreement. Life responds quickly to that choice. What you've been waiting for may already be closer than you think. Sometimes it's not about time. It's about alignment. And alignment can happen instantly. Stay with this feeling. Let it settle. Let it work quietly beneath the surface. Because when the inner world changes, the outer world must follow. And as this quiet work continues beneath the surface, something else begins to shift that many people don't expect at first. Your perception changes. You start noticing details you once overlooked. Your awareness sharpens, not in a tense way, but in a calm, observant way. It's as if the noise fades and clarity moves in. This is one of the first signs that alignment is taking place. You may begin to feel less reactive. Situations that once triggered anxiety or frustration no longer have the same grip on you. This doesn't mean challenges disappear overnight. It means your inner posture toward them transforms, and when your posture changes, outcomes change with it. The subconscious mind, once impressed with calm expectation, begins to orchestrate responses that feel almost effortless. This is how inner authority returns. Not dominance over others, but mastery over your own state. And mastery over your state is mastery over your experience. Joseph Murphy often spoke about the importance of assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Not pretending, not forcing emotion, but gently accepting the idea that what you desire is already forming. When this acceptance becomes natural, the mind no longer sends conflicting signals. Doubt quiets. Resistance dissolves. The law moves unhindered. During these days, you might notice that old thoughts try to reassert themselves. That's natural. Patterns don't dissolve instantly. When they arise, don't fight them. Fighting gives them energy. Simply replace them. Gently redirect your attention to the idea that things are unfolding perfectly, even if you don't yet see how. This redirection is not denial, it's selection. You're choosing which idea to nourish, and what you nourish grows. There's a reason simplicity is so powerful. Complexity gives the mind room to doubt. Simplicity gives it something clear to accept. When the mind accepts, the subconscious acts. And when the subconscious acts, reality rearranges. You don't need to understand every step in advance. Life doesn't ask for your blueprint. It asks for your agreement. Agreement with peace. Agreement with flow. Agreement with the idea that you are supported. As this agreement settles in, you may feel a subtle sense of relief, as if a burden has been lifted. This relief is not accidental. It's the nervous system responding to safety. And when the body feels safe, it stops resisting life. Resistance is what blocks flow. Release restores it. Think about how water moves. It doesn't argue with obstacles. It flows around them. It finds openings. It wears away barriers over time without effort. When your inner state becomes fluid instead of rigid, life mirrors that quality. This is why so many sudden changes appear out of nowhere. They were forming quietly all along. The moment resistance drops, they become visible. You may also notice that sleep improves, that your mind feels clearer upon waking, that you feel more grounded in the present moment. These are not small things. They are signs that the inner world is reorganizing itself around harmony instead of strain. Harmony is productive. Strain is not, and as harmony increases, synchronicity follows. Events line up in ways that feel almost choreographed. Timing becomes precise. Delays dissolve. What once felt stuck begins to move. When this happens, it's important not to rush ahead mentally. Don't ask, "What if this stops?" That question belongs to the old pattern. Instead, remain with the assumption that this is the new normal. That flow is natural for you. That support is constant. Normalizing good is one of the most overlooked principles of manifestation. When you treat improvement as temporary, the mind resists sustaining it. When you treat it as natural, it stabilizes. So as good things begin to appear, no matter how small, acknowledge them calmly. Let them feel ordinary. This tells the subconscious that this level of experience is acceptable, even expected. And once something becomes expected, it multiplies. There is also something powerful about gratitude during this phase. Not forced gratitude, but quiet appreciation. Appreciation signals recognition. Recognition deepens belief. Belief directs creation. You don't need to give thanks for what hasn't happened yet in a dramatic way. Simply appreciate the sense of ease, the clarity, the subtle improvements. These are the roots of larger changes. It's also important to understand that what flows into your life now does not need to resemble your old ideas of how things should happen. The mind often limits possibility by insisting on a specific path. But life is more creative than that. It often solves problems in ways you could never predict. Allow yourself to be surprised. When you let go of rigid expectations, you make room for better solutions. Ones that fit more naturally, ones that require less struggle, ones that arrive with grace. And grace is a sign that you are aligned. As this alignment deepens, you may feel drawn to simplify other areas of your life. Clearing physical space, letting go of clutter, releasing commitments that drain you. These impulses are not random. They reflect an inner shift toward order and flow. Outer order supports inner clarity. Inner clarity supports manifestation. Everything is connected. There is no need to rush this process. Urgency comes from fear. Confidence moves at its own pace. When you trust that things are unfolding, patience becomes effortless. And patience, paradoxically, often accelerates results. Because patience is not waiting, it's knowing. Knowing that what you've impressed upon your inner world is already in motion. Knowing that the law does not forget. Knowing that what has been accepted must express itself. This knowing changes how you carry yourself. It shows in your posture, in your tone, in your decisions. Others may notice it before you do. They may respond to you differently. Opportunities may appear simply because you are no longer pushing them away. This is how inner change becomes visible in the outer world. You don't need to announce it. You don't need to prove it. Just live from it. As these days continue, trust the process even if the mind asks for reassurance. The mind likes evidence, but evidence follows belief, not the other way around. Remind yourself of this gently when doubt tries to creep back in. Doubt is not a failure. It's a habit, and habits lose strength when they're no longer fed. Feed expectancy instead. Expectancy doesn't strain. It rests, it assumes, it allows. And as you allow, life responds. There may come a moment, sometimes sudden, sometimes quiet, when you realize something has changed. Not just externally, but internally. A sense of confidence you didn't have before. A calm certainty. A feeling that you're no longer chasing life, but moving with it. That realization is powerful. It marks the shift from effort to flow. From that point on, things tend to accelerate. Momentum builds. What started as a subtle inner change begins to ripple outward in tangible ways. And when you look back, you may realize that this was the moment everything began to reorganize, not because of force, not because of struggle, but because of alignment. Alignment with abundance, alignment with favor, alignment with peace. These are not distant ideals. They are natural states. States that become accessible the moment resistance dissolves. So stay present, stay open, stay aligned. You are not waiting for life to change. Life is responding to you now, and what flows next will reflect that shift. As this response from life continues to unfold, it's important to understand something subtle yet profound. Once a new assumption is accepted by the subconscious, it begins to operate automatically. You don't have to keep reminding it. You don't have to strain to maintain it. In fact, the more natural it feels, the more powerful it becomes. This is why effort eventually gives way to ease. At first, a new idea may feel unfamiliar, but repetition softens resistance. Soon, what once felt like a hopeful thought begins to feel like an expectation. An expectation quietly shapes outcomes. You may notice that your inner dialogue begins to change without conscious effort. The language of struggle slowly fades. Thoughts like, "Why is this so hard?" are replaced by, "This is working out." These shifts may seem small, but they are decisive. The subconscious responds to tone more than words, and a tone of confidence carries enormous creative power. Confidence doesn't shout. It settles. As it settles, your emotional responses follow. Anxiety loosens its grip. Urgency dissolves. Even impatience softens into trust. This emotional recalibration is not a side effect, it's a signal. It tells you that the inner environment is now supportive instead of resistant. And when the inner environment supports you, the outer world cooperates. You might begin to feel guided rather than pushed. Decisions become clearer. You're less torn between options. Intuition begins to speak more distinctly, not through dramatic signs, but through quiet certainty. You just know which direction feels right. That knowing is invaluable. It saves time. It prevents unnecessary struggle. It leads you toward outcomes that feel aligned rather than forced. This is also where inspired action arises naturally. Not action driven by fear or pressure, but action that feels timely and calm. You may feel prompted to make a call, send a message, explore an idea, or rest when you would have previously pushed. These impulses often lead to results that feel almost effortless. Effortless does not mean inactive. It means aligned. When alignment is present, even small actions carry disproportionate results. A single conversation opens a door. A simple decision creates momentum. What once required constant effort now unfolds with ease. Many people mistakenly believe that transformation must be dramatic to be real. But the deepest changes often arrive quietly. They integrate so smoothly that you almost miss the moment they happen, until you realize that something fundamental has shifted. This is why reflection is important. Take a moment each day to notice how you feel. Not what has happened yet, but how your inner state is evolving. Are you calmer, more hopeful, less reactive? These are the early indicators of change. Inner change always precedes outer change, and once the outer change begins, it tends to confirm the inner shift. This confirmation strengthens belief. Strengthened belief accelerates results. A feedback loop forms and momentum builds. Momentum is powerful because it carries you forward even when attention wavers. Once it's established, things tend to keep moving in the right direction. This is also why it's helpful to release the idea of going back to how things were. There is no need to revisit old patterns. They belong to a different assumption. You are no longer operating from that place. Instead, allow this new state to become familiar. Let ease become normal. Let support feel expected. Let good outcomes feel natural. When something feels natural, it no longer requires effort to sustain. You may also notice that your sense of self begins to shift. You no longer see yourself as someone trying to fix life. You begin to see yourself as someone life responds to. This subtle identity shift is one of the most powerful aspects of this process. Identity drives behavior. Behavior reinforces belief. Belief shapes reality. When you identify as someone aligned with flow, your choices reflect that. You don't chase what's meant for you. You recognize it. You don't fear loss as intensely because you trust replenishment. You don't cling to outcomes because you know there are always more possibilities forming. This trust is not blind, it's informed by experience. Each small confirmation strengthens it. As time passes, you may realize that the things you once desperately wanted no longer carry the same emotional charge. Not because you've given up, but because you're no longer seeking them from a place of lack. You expect fulfillment, and expectation changes the quality of desire. Desire rooted in lack feels heavy. Desire rooted in alignment feels light. Lightness allows movement, and movement is life. As this movement continues, remain attentive without being tense. There's a difference between awareness and vigilance. Awareness is open and curious. Vigilance is tight and fearful. Stay with awareness. Curiosity allows discovery. Fear restricts it. If moments of uncertainty arise, and they may, meet them with compassion rather than judgment. There's no need to criticize yourself for momentary doubt. Simply return to the assumption that things are unfolding well. This return strengthens the new pattern. Every return reinforces alignment. Eventually, you may reach a point where you no longer think about this process consciously. It becomes integrated. You simply live from a different state. A state of trust, a state of expectation, a state of cooperation with life, and from that state, results continue to appear. Some may be immediate, others may unfold over time. Both are expressions of the same principle. The law does not rush, but it never fails to express what has been accepted. This understanding brings peace. Peace is not the absence of challenge. It is the absence of inner conflict. And without inner conflict, challenges resolve more easily. You don't need to manage every detail. Life handles the details when the direction is clear. Your role is to remain aligned with the assumption that things are working in your favor. That assumption is enough. It sets everything in motion. And as you continue forward, remember this: what you allow yourself to accept as true becomes your experience. Choose carefully, but gently. Choose alignment. Choose trust. Choose flow, the rest will follow. And as this flow becomes more familiar, you may begin to recognize a quiet but profound shift in how you relate to time. Waiting no longer feels heavy. Delays no longer feel personal. You stop measuring progress by how quickly things happen and start recognizing progress by how naturally things unfold. This change alone can feel like freedom. When the mind stops arguing with time, time cooperates. So many frustrations come not from what is happening, but from the belief that it should have happened already. Once that belief softens, the emotional charge dissolves, and space opens for solutions to appear. Life does not respond well to pressure, but it responds immediately to allowance. Allowance is a state of trust. As trust deepens, your relationship with uncertainty transforms. Instead of seeing it as a threat, you begin to experience it as possibility. Uncertainty becomes the field in which new outcomes are born. Without it, nothing new could ever enter. This is why moments like this, when you are open, reflective, and receptive, are so powerful. They mark a transition point, a place where the old way of approaching life quietly gives way to something more sustainable. You may find that you're less interested in controlling outcomes and more interested in staying aligned with your inner state. This is wisdom. Control is exhausting. Alignment is efficient. Efficiency doesn't rush. It moves directly from this place. Even setbacks feel different. They no longer feel like proof of failure. They feel like information, redirection, sometimes even protection. When you trust the larger movement of life, you stop taking every obstacle personally. And when things are no longer personal, they lose their power to discourage you. Discouragement thrives on the belief that you are alone in the process. Alignment reminds you that you are not. There is an intelligence moving through your life that does not sleep, does not forget, and does not miss opportunities. When you align with it, you stop carrying the weight by yourself. That relief is real. It may show up as deeper breathing, slower thoughts, a sense that you don't need to figure everything out right now. These are not signs of passivity, they are signs of trust. Trust creates space. Space allows clarity. Clarity guides action. This is the natural sequence. You may notice that as clarity increases, your priorities shift. Things that once felt urgent no longer demand your attention. Things that truly matter rise to the surface. This reordering is not random. It reflects an inner recalibration toward what supports growth. Growth is not always about adding more. Sometimes it's about removing what no longer aligns. As you release what no longer fits, you create room for what does. This is where many people experience a sense of lightness they didn't realize they were missing. It's not dramatic. It's subtle. But once you feel it, you recognize how heavy things were before. That lightness is alignment in action. And from alignment, creativity flows, ideas surface, inspiration returns. You may feel drawn to things you once enjoyed but set aside. Joy re-enters quietly without needing permission. Joy is not a reward for having everything figured out. It's a signal that you're moving in the right direction. When joy is present, manifestation accelerates. The subconscious responds powerfully to positive emotional states, not forced happiness, but genuine ease, genuine interest, genuine appreciation. These emotions tell the mind that conditions are favorable. And when conditions are favorable internally, the external world responds. You might notice that people begin to respond to you differently. Conversations flow more easily. Resistance softens. Cooperation increases. This is not coincidence, it's resonance. People respond to the state you carry, often without realizing why. When you carry calm expectation, others feel it. When you carry confidence without strain, it invites trust. When you move without desperation, opportunities feel safer approaching you. This is how alignment becomes visible, and as this visibility grows, you may realize that you no longer feel the need to convince or persuade. You don't need to explain yourself as much. You don't need external validation to feel secure. Your sense of stability comes from within. Inner stability is magnetic. It attracts situations that reflect it. This is why those who master their inner state seem to live in a different reality. They are not exempt from challenges, but they are not consumed by them. Challenges pass through rather than taking root. Rootedness comes from alignment. As days pass, trust what you're noticing. Don't dismiss subtle changes because they don't match dramatic expectations. Subtle changes are often the most enduring. They integrate smoothly. They last. What you are experiencing now is not a momentary boost. It's a recalibration, a return to a more natural way of relating to life. Life was never meant to be constant struggle. It was meant to be responsive, and responsiveness begins within. So continue to allow, continue to assume support. Continue to notice how things rearrange themselves when you stop forcing them. There is no finish line here. There is only movement. And the direction of that movement is now different than it was before. That difference will continue to express itself in ways that make sense only in hindsight. But one day, you'll look back and realize that this was the moment things began to flow again. Not because you demanded it, but because you allowed it. And as this allowing deepens, another quiet realization often emerges, one that many people overlook at first. You begin to understand that life has not been withholding from you, it has been responding to you, not as punishment, not as delay, but as reflection. This realization can feel humbling, yet empowering at the same time, because it places the point of influence back where it belongs, within. When you recognize this, blame dissolves, regret softens, the past loses its emotional grip. You no longer need to replay old decisions or imagine how things could have gone differently. Those moments served their purpose. They brought you here, and here is where movement begins. The present moment becomes sufficient. From this sufficiency, gratitude arises naturally. Not gratitude that tries to get something but gratitude that acknowledges what already is. This form of gratitude is grounding. It anchors you in reality rather than fantasy, and from reality, true change emerges. You may notice that your mind feels less scattered. Thoughts slow down, mental noise fades. You're not pulled in as many directions at once. This mental coherence is powerful. When the mind is unified, it sends a clear signal. And clear signals produce clear results. This is why clarity often precedes breakthrough. With clarity comes discernment. You become better at recognizing what aligns and what doesn't. You no longer feel obligated to pursue everything that presents itself. You choose more carefully. You invest your energy where it feels right. Energy follows attention. When attention is no longer wasted on worry, comparison, or fear, it becomes available for creation. Creation doesn't always look like building something new. Sometimes it looks like allowing something that was already forming to finally come through. Allowing requires courage. Not the courage to fight, but the courage to trust. Trust that you don't need to micromanage outcomes. Trust that you don't need to monitor every detail. Trust that the intelligence guiding life is capable. This trust often brings a sense of quiet confidence that doesn't need reinforcement. You stop seeking reassurance constantly. You stop checking whether things are working. You simply know that they are. Knowing is calm. Knowing is steady. Knowing is effective. From this place, even challenges feel different. They no longer feel like interruptions. They feel like part of the process. Temporary adjustments rather than permanent blocks. And because they feel temporary, they pass more quickly. This is one of the great paradoxes of life. The less you resist, the faster things move. Resistance slows. Acceptance accelerates. As acceptance becomes your default state, you may feel a deeper connection to yourself. Not the version shaped by pressure or expectation, but the quieter, more authentic version beneath. This connection brings self-trust. And self-trust is foundational. When you trust yourself, you trust your decisions. When you trust your decisions, you move forward without hesitation. When you move forward without hesitation, momentum builds. Momentum carries you beyond what effort ever could. You may also notice that fear no longer dominates your imagination. The future no longer feels like a list of potential problems. It begins to feel open, flexible, full of options. This shift alone can feel like relief. Fear contracts possibility, trust expands it. As possibility expands, creativity returns. Solutions appear where none seemed available. Ideas emerge that feel practical and inspired at the same time. These ideas often arrive quietly, without fanfare. They feel obvious once they appear, yet impossible before. This is the nature of insight. Insight does not shout, it reveals. And when insight is acted upon, not urgently but naturally, it leads to outcomes that feel aligned rather than forced. Alignment is sustainable, force is not. Sustainability matters because true change is not about one moment. It's about continuity. It's about living in a way that supports ongoing flow rather than constant correction. As this continuity establishes itself, you may realize that you no longer identify with the version of yourself that was struggling. Not because that version was wrong, but because it's no longer current. Growth doesn't erase the past, it integrates it. Integration brings peace. Peace does not mean passivity, it means coherence. It means your thoughts, emotions, and expectations are no longer pulling in opposite directions. They move together. When inner movement is unified, outer movement follows suit. You may begin to sense that you are supported in ways you can't fully articulate, that life is meeting you halfway, that things are not as fragile as they once seemed. This sense of support is subtle, but it's powerful. It changes how you walk into a room. It changes how you speak. It changes how you respond. Others feel it. And when others feel it, interactions shift. Cooperation replaces resistance. Understanding replaces tension. Even silence becomes comfortable. This is resonance in action. Resonance doesn't require explanation. It operates beneath words. It's felt rather than analyzed. As you continue in this state, you may notice that your desires themselves begin to refine. You no longer want things merely to escape discomfort. You want things that genuinely support your well-being. This refinement is a sign of maturity, not loss. When desires align with well-being, fulfillment follows more easily. Fulfillment does not always arrive as excitement. Often, it arrives as contentment, a quiet satisfaction, a sense that things are as they should be, even as they continue to evolve. This is not complacency. It's grounded optimism. Grounded optimism does not ignore reality. It works with it, and working with reality is far more effective than fighting against it. As you remain in this flow, remember that nothing needs to be forced. Nothing needs to be rushed. Nothing needs to be proven. What is unfolding because the conditions are now right. Conditions matter, and the most important condition has already changed. Your inner alignment. From here, life responds naturally, and that response continues moment by moment, step by step, in ways that affirm what you've already begun to sense, that things are moving, that support is present, that you are no longer stuck, and that this shift, once begun, continues. And as this continuation settles into your awareness, you may begin to recognize something even deeper, a sense that you are no longer separate from the process itself. You are not standing outside of life, waiting for it to deliver something to you. You are within it, participating, influencing, and responding in real time. This realization quietly dissolves the old feeling of helplessness. Helplessness comes from the belief that power exists somewhere else. Alignment restores the understanding that power moves through you. When this understanding takes root, your relationship with effort changes again. You still act, but your actions feel guided rather than pressured. You don't push from fear, you move from clarity, and clarity has a way of conserving energy while producing better results. This is why aligned effort often feels lighter yet accomplishes more. You may notice that your tolerance for chaos decreases. Not in a judgmental way, but in a discerning way. You simply no longer feel drawn to environments, conversations, or habits that disrupt your inner balance. This isn't withdrawal, it's refinement. You're tuning your life to a frequency that supports growth. What you tolerate shapes what you experience. As tolerance refines, your boundaries become clearer. You say yes more intentionally, you say no without guilt. This clarity frees enormous amounts of emotional energy. Energy that can now be directed toward creation instead of maintenance. Maintenance keeps things from falling apart. Creation allows things to expand. Expansion doesn't always mean more. Sometimes it means deeper, more meaning, more coherence, more fulfillment in fewer things. This depth is often what people are truly seeking, even when they think they want external change. External change without inner depth rarely satisfies. Inner depth naturally invites external improvement. The order matters. As this depth continues to develop, you may feel a renewed sense of connection to yourself, to others, to life as a whole. This connection is subtle but stabilizing. It creates a feeling of belonging that doesn't depend on circumstances. Belonging is not about fitting in. It's about being at ease where you are. From ease, confidence grows naturally. Not confidence that demands attention, but confidence that doesn't need it. This quiet confidence is powerful. It allows you to stand firm without rigidity and to adapt without losing yourself. Adaptability is one of the most valuable qualities you can embody. It allows you to move with change instead of being disrupted by it. And change is constant. When you move with change, you stop fearing it. Fear of change often masquerades as fear of loss. But when you trust alignment, you realize that nothing truly aligned is ever lost. It evolves. It transforms. It takes new forms. This realization can be liberating. It allows you to release attachment to specific outcomes while remaining open to positive results. It keeps you flexible, and flexibility keeps you responsive. Responsiveness is key. Life responds to responsiveness. As you remain responsive rather than reactive, your experiences take on a different quality. You feel less rushed, less pressured, less compelled to prove anything. You simply engage with what's in front of you. Presence replaces projection. When you are present, you're not living in imagined futures or replayed pasts. You're available to what's actually happening, and what's actually happening is often more supportive than the mind predicts. This is one of the quiet surprises of alignment. Reality becomes kinder when you stop resisting it. You may also notice that your sense of purpose begins to clarify, not as a single dramatic calling, but as a way of being. Purpose becomes less about what you do and more about how you do it, how you show up, how you relate, how you contribute. This shift removes pressure. You no longer feel the need to figure everything out at once. You allow purpose to reveal itself through experience, through curiosity, through engagement. Engagement brings feedback. Feedback refines direction. Direction doesn't need to be fixed to be effective. It needs to be responsive. As you continue, trust that you are being guided in ways that make sense for you. Not for someone else's timeline, not for someone else's definition of success. For you, comparison loses its grip in alignment. You stop measuring your progress against others. You measure it against your own sense of coherence, your own peace, your own clarity. And when you do, you may realize that you've come farther than you thought. This realization builds confidence quietly. It reinforces trust. It stabilizes expectation. Expectation, once stabilized, becomes assumption. An assumption is the doorway through which experience enters. What you assume to be true begins to shape what you notice, how you interpret events, and which opportunities you recognize. Assumption is powerful because it operates beneath conscious awareness. This is why alignment feels effortless once established. You're no longer trying to think positively. You're simply operating from a different baseline. Baseline matters. From this baseline, even future goals feel different. They feel like natural extensions rather than distant hopes. You don't cling to them. You allow them to form. Allowing does not weaken desire. It purifies it. Purified desire moves cleanly. It doesn't tangle itself in fear or doubt. It moves toward fulfillment with grace. As this grace becomes more familiar, you may realize that your life no longer feels like a series of problems to solve. It feels like a process to participate in, a rhythm to follow, a conversation rather than a battle. This is a profound shift, and it doesn't require constant attention to maintain. It sustains itself because it's aligned with how life actually works. You are no longer working against the current. You are moving with it. And from here, whatever continues to unfold will do so with greater ease, greater clarity, and greater coherence, because the most important alignment has already taken place within you. And now, as this understanding settles fully, allow yourself to rest in it, not as an ending, but as a beginning. What has shifted within you does not need to be protected or defended. It will sustain itself naturally, because it is rooted in truth rather than effort. You don't need to watch closely for results. You don't need to monitor every detail. Life knows how to complete what has been set in motion. Your role is simply to remain aligned with the inner state you've touched, calm, receptive, trusting. Trust is not passive. It is deeply active beneath the surface. It reorganizes perception. It reshapes expectation. It invites outcomes that match its tone. From this place, even silence feels meaningful. Even pauses feel purposeful. You stop interpreting stillness as stagnation and begin to recognize it as preparation. Something is always happening, even when nothing appears to be moving. This awareness changes how you live your days. You're no longer bracing for disappointment or rushing toward relief. You move with a quiet steadiness, knowing that what aligns will arrive and what no longer serves will fall away without struggle. That steadiness is strength. Strength that doesn't need tension. Strength that doesn't need proof. Strength that doesn't need to announce itself. As life continues to respond, let yourself receive without questioning whether you deserve it. Deserving is not something you earn. It's something you allow. The moment you stop resisting good, it finds room to enter. And when it enters, let it stay. Let improvement become normal. Let ease become familiar. Let support feel expected. Because what you normalize, you sustain. There will be moments ahead where you remember how things once felt, heavy, uncertain, constrained. When that memory arises, let it remind you how far you've come, not pull you back. You are not returning to that state. You've moved beyond it. Beyond struggle, beyond constant effort, beyond waiting. You are now participating in a different relationship with life, One built on alignment rather than resistance, on trust rather than control, on flow rather than force. This relationship continues to deepen with time, quietly shaping experiences, refining direction, and opening pathways that make sense only when you walk them. And one day, perhaps sooner than you expect, you'll realize that what once felt like a miracle was simply life responding to a new inner agreement. An agreement with peace, an agreement with abundance, an agreement with ease. That agreement is already in place. Everything that follows will reflect it.